Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Weird and surreal experiences you've had. Not just ghost stories, but real and odd experiences. Things that made you really question things. Here is mine. So me and my buddy were walking from his house to a gas station nearby for some snacks. It was about 1 or 2 a.m. and it was a warm night. We weren't worried at all or anything because we do this all the time. We got to the gas station and got our snacks, and when we got to the register, this old lady there was talking to herself while looking out the window with this uncomfortable tilt in her head that no one could be comfortable doing. I tried to break the tension by asking her if she was new, because I've never seen her working there before, and she shot a look at me that looked angry. No. And she just grabbed our stuff and started ringing our stuff up. Then she just stopped and looked out the window again and started mumbling this like incomprehensible mumbo-jumbo. My friend and I had no idea what to do. It was so surreal. We just sat and watched. She then turned back to us with a smile and started asking us how our night was, while re-ringing our stuff back up. We just kind of stood there. My friend pulled out a 10 on the counter, grabbed our stuff, and told her to keep the change. As we left, we looked back in the window and saw her staring out at us, mumbling to herself. I felt like she was cursing me. When we got back, we just had this eerie feeling like we just witnessed something that wasn't supposed to be seen.
About 10 years ago, I was going through a really dark time in my life. 19, got kicked out of my parents' house. About the only thing I had was my guitar. I started playing when I was 8. It's a damn nice guitar. Vintage Gibson J45, bought at a yard sale. And it's a wonder the damn thing didn't get stolen while I was drifting around. I was in southwestern Colorado, staying with a good friend who was happy to have me. Being a trust fund kid, I didn't have to work because he had more than enough money for the both of us, but I would go stir crazy if I didn't have anything to do, so I started busking in the streets of Grand Junction. I'd play and sing the day through, and to be honest, I loved it. I loved making people happy with my music. One day I decided I was going to get shit-faced. Back then and even now I don't drink much, mainly because I'm a super depressed drunk. I drag everyone down when I do this. So I meet up with these older college kids I had met a couple times before and told them I had $300 for booze. All my busking money from the last 2 weeks, I wasn't really homeless and didn't have any bills, so I got to save all the cash, and told them I'd pay for booze if they gave me somewhere to drink. Fast forward to about 1 that morning, and I'm shit-faced off UV vodka and Wild Irish Rosé, trying to write music and sobbing about getting beat when I was a kid. They decide they're sick of me and drive me to a little town outside of GJ and drop me off at the gas station and said, "We're going to go around the corner and pick up one of our buddies. We'll be right back." As you can imagine, they weren't right back. So I stumble into this old rundown station. It didn't look like much had changed since 1972, and try to get myself some coffee, literally fall down drunk. I burn myself, and this kindly-looking old dude comes over and says, "Let me get that for you, son, sit down," and flashes me a smile. My chest just warmed with that gesture, and I took a seat on one of the bar stools by the door. I can't really describe how kind this man looked. Best way I can put it is he looked like the kindly late 60s, early 70s dude you'd see on a dock fishing alone at a peaceful lake. Been through some shit with pain behind his eyes, but loving a life well lived. He sets my coffee down and walks behind the counter and says, "I see you got a guitar, play me something," with a grin. I smile back and whip out the old Gibson from its case. He says I like country, and I say, "That's all I play." I pick and sing my way through some old Cash and Waylon, and he's just watching me. I can picture him perfectly, standing there enjoying the music while spitting tobacco juice into a styrofoam cup. I end, "I still miss someone." And he says, "That's great, son. You got some talent. Think you can play me George Jones?" So I start into the bartender's blues, and right as I finish, he says thank you and walks into the back. I sat there for around 5 minutes and put the guitar back in its case. I reach down to latch the bottom latch and fall off the stool, and that's where I black out. A few hours later, I wake up to a gal vacuuming by my head and she says, "Finally sober?" I say yes, polish off my cold coffee and walk into the crisp air with my tail tucked between my legs, hangover starting to kick in. Never thought much of the whole thing. I returned about 4 years later, life a lot more intact. It wasn't even really intentional, but I was checking out the back roads and just happened to roll in and recognize the place. I grabbed a Mountain Dew and came up to the register and started joking with the guy behind the counter, early 40s guy, and told him about passing out drunk as a skunk on their floor. I'm just going to walk out and see a plaque on the wall that says Vern Davis with a picture of the old man I had met. I pointed it out and said, "Who is that?" The guy says, "Oh, that's old Vern. He started this station back in the 60s. I'm standing there reading the sign when I see the bottom. It says January 22nd, 1932 to October 8th, 1999. I don't know what happened that night in Colorado, but thanks for the ear and the coffee, Vern."
At Grandma's house in Virginia, on an 80-acre piece of land, about 12 years old. My dad was helping my grandma with some financial stuff, so I was out wandering the land like I usually do. I would usually just bring a book and read up against a tree, or do some whittling, time-killing stuff, just enjoying nature and our beautiful property. Sitting with my back against a nice old oak tree, reading a book and just drifting off to sleep. Not uncommon, did it all the time, since I love being in nature, and a nap outdoors is ultimate comfy. Suddenly I am awakened by some leaves rustling and a very small twig snap. Open my eyes and there is a white-tail fawn just standing right in front of me. I'm still kind of in a daze since I just woke up, and I just reached out and petted it. Wasn't even thinking. I just kind of did it naturally. Fawn obviously had seen me, and when I touched it, it didn't flinch or anything. I just pet it once, gently and quickly, and then just sat there and watched it nibble on some grass for like 30 seconds and just walk off as if nothing happened. It was a ridiculously spiritual moment. I still remember it vividly. I'm guessing since I was young and still half asleep that maybe the fawn didn't register me as a threat at all. I didn't even think about petting it, just kind of did it. So I'm guessing because I didn't even think about it that maybe it didn't see or sense me as malicious at all. Dunno. Maybe its parents were brother and sister and it was just slow. It was a cool moment either way. I haven't had anything like that happen since, although I'm fantastic with animals and babies, so I think some of it might just be an innate ability or trait. Pick semi-related. What my little buddy looked like.
We were at some rest stop in Arizona. I don't remember the name of the town. I don't remember what route we were at. I just remember we had pulled over because my parents needed a break from the drive. My parents told me to sit down at a table as my mother went to the bathroom, and my father stood in line at McDonald's to get us some well-deserved food. As I sat down in my chair, my legs dangling, I surveyed the room. This was a common practice for me. I liked to look at everything around me, observe whatever was going on, and take in all the atmosphere. Of course, I was 8 at this point, so my young mind simply thought the rest stop was cool. And it was cool. The variety of people that you would see at a rest stop at any given day was overwhelming to me. Families, couples, old people, kids on a field trip, truck drivers, police officers, people from all walks of life. During this trip, however, one person in particular caught my eye. A truck driver. He had a bright red trucker's cap atop his greasy auburn mullet. His eyes were covered by the hat. His face was covered in a rugged stubble and dirt from the hours spent on the road. Resting on his upper lip, a thick mustache, a home for the dirt and crumbs that fall from the midnight meals truck drivers grow accustomed to. He was wearing a washed-out denim jacket, covering what seemed to be a Lynyrd Skynyrd shirt. He had a coffee on the table, his right hand holding it as he caressed the side with his thumb. I don't know what made me so entranced by this man. To think of the places he'd been, the things he must have seen on the road was captivating to me. I must have been staring at him for 2 solid minutes in an uninterrupted glare. He looked up at me. His eyes locked onto mine. A wave of ice flew through my spine, my arms locked up, and I was staring straight at him. His eyes were soulless, and to this day, the only color that accurately describes his entire eye is black. He smirked at me and kept on staring. I couldn't move, I couldn't yell, I couldn't do anything. Every second I felt my heart trying to escape my chest. My forehead and neck felt like I had just gotten out of a pool, my mouth and throat as if I had gargled sand. The man got out of his seat, leaving his coffee behind. I managed to turn my head around and saw my dad on his way to the table with the food. The man was going to beat my father to the table. He approached me. He smelled like he had used a cologne of cigarettes, whiskey, and sulfur. He put his hand, covered in dirt, on my shoulder and said, "Have a good trip, Timmy," and walked off. "Timmy, what's wrong, bud?" I heard my father ask in front of me. I shook my head and said, "Didn't you see that guy? He came up to me. He knew my name." My father looked confused. "What guy?" "You were the only one over here while I was up there, bud." "You look pale," he said as he felt my forehead. "You feel as cold as ice. Here, have some food. We haven't eaten in a while." "But I know he was there," I replied as I looked over to the table he had been sitting at. The coffee was gone.
Me and a couple of friends were doing a loop on the freeway. Basically, we just drive around, chill, and talk. Well, after the ride was over, I hopped in my car and began to head home around 3 a.m. from Houston into Pearland. Well, I'm low on gas and kind of hungry, so I pull into a gas station that's empty and has the attendant make transactions through a slot. So I ask the dude to grab me a Gatorade and some chips when I hear someone shuffling up behind me. I turn around and this dude is covered in blood, like head to toe, but his clothes looked fine. So he just comes limping up and stands behind me, and I'm pretty tired, and we made eye contact, so I speak up and ask him, "Rough night?" He says, "Yeah, but it's about to get rougher," and grabs his wallet from his back pocket. The attendant comes back with my shit, and I pay and get back into my car. So I sit there and watch as this dude buys some stuff and staggers around waiting before coming back to his nice-looking car, and he just falls onto the hood and starts crying. He starts banging on the hood before falling down to the ground and curling up and continues crying. I think he killed someone, and it was finally catching up to him. His car wasn't in bad shape, so it wasn't a hit and run, and he seemed fine other than being covered in blood and limping around.
Sorry I'm late. This goes out to all the Pennsylvania anons. I've been in the Army National Guard for 4 years as a military policeman. The unit I'm in coordinates the support and maneuver elements, transport engineers, MPs, signal, etc., for my state. Over this past summer, we were involved in a nearly 2-month simulation called a Warfighter. It is a war game that is predominantly done using simulation software and is interconnected. We were working with the Air Force and other states. The area we were operating in was Fort Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. The barracks there aren't the best. They date back to the 1940s for some of them. The lockers were all from the 60s. Anyway, we were doing day and night shifts. Even though I was on the day shift, I was in the night shift barracks. I was the only one from day shift. How the barracks are situated is, they had about 20 rows of 2 bunk beds, all off to the sides while there was a long aisle down the middle. As below, so was the second floor. Anyway, I got back to the barracks at around 18:30 and, even though I was tired, went up to the USO to grab some snacks. When I got back, it was properly dark out, and when I entered the barracks, it was frigid, even though it was humid and hot outside. I turned on the lights and got ready for sleep. I slept pretty comfy and warm until about 02:30, when the sound of running on the second floor woke me up. Again, I'm the only one sleeping in this barracks during the night. I got up out of bed and I can clearly see my breath. It is that cold in the building. The running, and I mean sprinting, was loud and distinct and seemingly constant, as if the source was running in circles all around the floor. Wanting to know who it was, I proceeded to the stairs. I'm a sergeant, so I know if there is a private or specialist, he's about to get reprimanded for waking me. When I got to the stairs, I yelled up for whoever it was to stop and get their ass downstairs. Instead of stopping, the feet just kept pattering away, running. By the sound, it sounded like they were running barefoot, just to the edge of the stairs, out of my sight. The only light was the red exit light behind me, shining up the stairs. Getting a bit pissed off now, I whipped up the stairs and turned. No sound, no lousy private, nothing was there. I then considered it could have been an animal, and my brain just figured it for a human. I turned on the light and did a brief walkthrough. When I got back to the stairs, I heard a new sound. The showers were going. At this point, I figure I'm being screwed with. The other day, shift clowns probably got in, and the running culprit was hiding in a locker or something. I got into the bathroom faster than the flash and found nothing. The light wasn't even on. It took me a second just to find which shower it was that was turned on. I yell out for them to stop this shit because I only have a couple more hours left of sleep. After this, I just decided to get back to sleep. Not even a minute into my attempt, I heard 3 loud jumps, as if someone was jumping right above my bunk upstairs. I know I yelled something pretty loud, and it stopped. I heard nothing else until the night shift came back. This wasn't the last of the strange disturbances in that building, but definitely the most spooky in retrospect. PIC-related are the barracks.
I've had plenty of strange experiences, but there's one event that took place recently, as in a week or so ago. It was somewhere between 12:01 a.m. I was home alone in my small office, which has a window that looks out into the backyard. It must have been overcast because it was completely pitch black out there, and usually I can see moonlight at least. I had an uneasy feeling when looking out there, as if something had eyes on me, but I was comfy, so I left the window open and kept sitting there. Usually I'd be doing something on my computer, or at the very least listening to music, but I was completely fixated on the still darkness. Suddenly, I get the urge to pick up my guitar and start playing, which isn't unusual, but normally I have a melody in my head that I need to get out, or I feel like practicing. This time felt very different. I got into playing guitar relatively late, and have only played for about 3 years, so I still make a lot of mistakes, and constantly look at my hand placement, but this time I just played, not once looking at the guitar, still staring into oblivion, and I played the creepiest fucking tune, completely different from anything I've played before, and not in my usual style. I played this strange melody perfectly for what seemed like 15 minutes, and turned out to be more like 2 hours, not once looking at anything except the darkness outside my window. I wish I'd recorded it, but just thinking about the sound sends chills down my spine.
Oh, I have plenty. All from the same neighborhood I lived in for about 6 years, just as a setup. Be 12 to 13-ish, family moving again. We finally find a place in a pretty low-class neighborhood. The house we chose was a bit lower class than others. Overgrown cracked brick, ivy, very strange and awkward layout, and a big tree shaped into a perfect pitchfork shape with 3 prongs right in the front. It was rather eerie, foreshadowing that my mom called it the Devil's Pitchfork. After living in it for a month and starting to get settled, we started talking with the neighbors. They seem fidgety when we talk about how old the houses are around here. There is an odd history with these houses. One describes the house next to us having had an incident with the police where they were called for a noise complaint, neighbors saying there was a party, only to come and find the house had no signs of someone living in it. The house down the street was said to have had a young girl murdered in it, and people have seen and heard her walking around. And the big one was our house, which said that just about a year before we came in, a bunch of literal Satan worshippers were living there and doing some weird stuff down in the basement. I always felt strange about that room and never went down there. It was always so freezing cold, even in the middle of a 100 Fahrenheit summer day. Little did I know how bad it could really get. First one incident that I got in recent memory, be sent down to the basement by parents to go and find something, since we're using that big room for storage as no one used it anyways. Next to the fireplace down there, I find what looks like a hidden compartment chopped into the drywall and loosely covered with wood. There's a single piece of paper inside. I pull it out, and it's a detailed drawing of a dagger with occult symbols and rather strange features, like an eye in the center, that was drawn in a way I could only describe was filled with absolute rage. A few minutes later, I hear a bang. The water heater literally exploded and started flooding the basement. GTFO with paper in hand, and then put it on my desk in my room. Get the water heater fixed. Forget about the picture for a few days, and it seemingly disappears. A few weeks later, it shows up again in a completely different spot than I remember. Get that same uneasy feeling. Dad gets injured working just a few minutes later. This repeats a couple more times. The paper disappears, then reappears, and something bad would happen. Finally had enough. I go to the fireplace and throw the paper into the fire next time I found it. A few minutes later, my pet bird starts fidgeting around and escapes, right out the back door which was just opened, and I watched it fly right into the mouth of a feral cat that was sitting there outside like it was waiting for it. I felt like something was mocking me. Fast forward a few years, there was more than just the dagger picture incident. Bangs, growls, a few unexplained claw marks. The family decides to move down the street but in the same neighborhood, telling people there's no air conditioning. We packed up most of our stuff without much issue and we're mostly in the newer house now. But one day I got woken up by my mom. She's absolutely terrified. Says my dad went there to get a few more boxes of stuff and never came out. It was the middle of the night. We went over there and saw what was going on. Instantly I feel something is wrong as soon as I walk in the front door. Go to my parents' room. Sounds like there's men talking and laughing on the other side. A lot of men. 30, according to my mom. We tried to budge the door. It never had a real lock, but it felt like someone was propped up against it and it wouldn't open. The door was also rather hot to the touch. Fearing a fire or something, we redoubled our efforts and were able to get the door open. My dad was sitting in the center of the room with no furniture inside, except a single small TV was playing porn, and he was surrounded by empty liquor bottles, things he never really would go out of his way to get. He was out of his mind, and when we dragged him out of there, he immediately started vomiting and crying and mumbling about his friends. We hightail it out of there, putting my dad on a moving cart and rolling him to the new house. Dad comes out of it the next day, having no recollection of what happened. A few weeks later, after our dog suddenly died and my mom had a brief mental breakdown, we talked with a neighbor who saw us cart my dad away and explain what happened. My mom starts describing how there were men behind the door. 30 men? The neighbor asks without hesitation and gets a haunted look in her eyes. Yeah. How did you know? They live there, is all she says before she turns and goes back into her own. Now let's fast forward to a year or so in the new house. After having a bit of the fear of God put into me by the last experience, felt much better and didn't see much in terms of strange spiritual things for a while. But now we were in the house that a little girl was supposedly murdered in, and there was a spot in the kitchen that my mom never wanted to walk past. Said there was a feeling of anger there that she didn't like, and whoever stood there started getting angry for no reason. Grandma comes over to visit. Now she's a case all by herself, but that's a different story. She starts talking with my mom in the kitchen and starts standing in the place where that bad energy is. A few moments later, sweet old Grandma starts getting extremely irritated. Goes full evil Bilbo on my mom and claws her face. We end up kicking Grandma out later. A few weeks later, wander down into the basement of the new home. Playing around with some stuff down there, I had a few musical instruments. All of a sudden, the place gets really chilly. Can see my breath. Suddenly, I feel something grab my shoulder and felt an icy gust of wind in my ear that sounds like a little girl breathing. Nope out of there immediately and get my dad. He comes down there and has a feeling of looking in a crawl space in the corner. In it, we find a pair of very old vintage skis and a set of little girls' clothes from the 30s or 40s, right below the kitchen. We later moved out and the entire neighborhood was completely demolished within the year. Now there's a bunch of high-end apartments in its place there, and I wonder if there have some weird things going on. Not going over to find out.
My beloved aunt died a year ago, leaving by himself my old uncle that doesn't even know how to cook. Because of that, once every 2 weeks, when he's out of the house, I go there to clean shit up for him. Lots of weird stuff has happened, like hearing things falling over, seeing figures in the corner of my eyes and shit like that. But this beats them all. About a week ago, last time I went there, cleaning the living room. Feel cold air even though everything is closed. Think I saw something in the bathroom. Go check. Of course it's nothing. I go clean his bedroom that's right next to the bathroom. Making his bed. Hear this whisper right next to my ear. Lasts a couple of seconds and then fades away. Get a chill down my spine. A huge panic response kicks in. Scream and run in the other room. I swear this was the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. Of course, sometimes I get spooked, but I've never felt that dread and panic in my entire life. Thought it could have been me not hearing well, or the sound of the blankets being moved. But I know that it was something else.
I've been suffering from what appears to be night terrors frequently for a long time now. This night terrors include nightmares, hallucinations, vertigo sensation, pressure, immobilization, sensations, and a weird tremor of the body. Each time it gets harder and harder to fight these night terrors, it seems as if I have to break them with my own will and energy. And each time it takes me more time and more energy to do so. So a few nights ago it happened to me again. I already recognized these night terror feelings before it actually happened, even in my sleep. So I felt it, and I knew I had to fight it. I knew I had to concentrate all of my strength and my energy to break it. But I was feeling really tired, so I just let it happen. I thought, what could go wrong? It's all in my head anyways, so I didn't even fight it. And it was a big mistake. It started as usual. The immobilization, the pressure, the feeling of velocity even though I'm not moving, the vertigo, the tremor. It kept going for a while and I didn't fight at all. I tried to relax myself by imagining I was flying around, and it helped a little bit, at least to calm down the beating of my heart. So when I felt completely relaxed, my heartbeat regularized, and I started to actually enjoy the sensation. And as soon as I started to enjoy it, I started to see glimpses of colors and lights flashing inside my head. Purple lights, golden lights, green lights, pink and blue lights. They were just flashing in my head, and it felt as if I was spinning with them. I was actually quite enjoying it, until I realized I was not alone. Behind all the zooming noise, I could hear whisperings. They were so faint that I couldn't identify neither the language or the quantity of voices. I got a bad feeling. I was not scared, but I definitely became wary. I tried to concentrate through all the sensations and what I was seeing to catch some of the voices, to see if I could understand what they were saying. And then it all stopped. I felt nothing. I couldn't hear anything, and I still couldn't move. The emptiness and the silence kept going for a long while, and it started to unease me. But I waited. Then I heard it. It was a clear and clean single whisper in my left ear. I didn't recognize the language and I couldn't identify the voice. All I knew was it was male. It seemed to come from inside my head, and that it made me feel as if my blood was frozen, as if my heart had stopped. I tried to move, and I couldn't nudge, and the strange whispering kept going. I was feeling desperate. I concentrated so hard to break this, it actually took all of my strength and all of my energy, but I managed. And when I finally got a grasp of my body again, the whispering chant stopped. It was beyond terrifying, and I have been so scared these days to fall asleep.
I had this weird experience when I was a kid. I was probably around 10 at the time. My mom took me to the park to kill some time since we were waiting for something. I played for a little bit, but decided it was a good idea to use the restroom before leaving. I went to find the public park restroom, a small square building that only had 2 bathroom stalls. I went in, but I stopped abruptly while noticing a small, hunched-over woman like Pick related over the sink. There was a mirror by the sink, but I couldn't see her face. She was like a silhouette. I left despite the fact that the stalls were open and I had to go badly. Something didn't sit right in my gut, so I waited patiently outside for her to leave. Several minutes passed and my mom told me it was time to go. Maybe I was seeing things. I went back in cautiously, but no one was in the restroom this time.
Creepy gas station story. I was at college. I didn't have a car, so my mother picked me up for a break. We were traveling at night on a toll highway, and we needed gas, so we stopped at this odd-looking exit. Being a toll highway, all of the exits usually have a toll exit and entrance. But this one just had a road off the highway, pretty much defeating the purpose of being a toll road. Didn't think much of it, and proceeded to drive about a mile from the highway to a dark gas station like PIC-related. It was closed, and no one else was around. It was hard to see because everything else was pitch black, except for the lights immediately above us and the dark forest around us. We opened the car doors to pump the gas, and we smelled death. The smell of long, rotting, putrid flesh was everywhere. It wasn't like roadkill, where the stench is emitting from a single point, but the smell was widespread and saturated the air. There was nowhere to escape from the smell. It smelled like hundreds of dead animals were scattered in the woods, or parts or bodies. Whatever it was dead, and there was a lot of it. It was so silent in the woods around us. No crickets, no birds, nothing. We're both nauseous from the stink, and growing increasingly paranoid from the isolation and the smell of death. I tell my mother we need to leave now, and if we don't get gas, I know we won't get far enough away from this spooky place. It's a long 2 minutes waiting for the pump to finish, looking all around us in the dark, heads dizzy from the death smell. We get in the car and peel out of there, speeding back to the highway off the road, not feeling the least bit safe even as we are driving away. The whole place felt like a trap. Maybe we weren't the right kind of prey for whatever was there. No kidding, we haven't found that road on that highway since.
All right, blog post time then. Be me in middle school. On a class camping trip in some forested area. The closest form of civilization to this place is a small rural town that ends just around where the forest area begins. Friends and I wake up early at around 3 a.m. and make hot cocoa for an early morning snack. One problem though. No bread.jpg. 2 friends and I decide to visit the small town and see if there's a bakery open. I know what you're thinking. What were you thinking looking for a bakery that's open that early in the morning, especially in a small town? The answer is, we weren't thinking. Maybe we just wanted an excuse to sneak out of camp. So that's what we did, snuck out of camp. Even on a moonlit night, the dirt road to town is still dark, so we bring a flashlight with us. Begin playing around with the flashlight, shining its beam on the trees and stuff, trying to scare each other. To keep things interesting, we play Spot Sadako. The Ring was a pretty popular movie at the time. So we'd shine the light through the woods every now and then, expecting the beam to reflect that pale-skinned, white-gowned ghost lady. That or some creepy well. A little scary, but the thought of safety in numbers keeps us from chickening it back to camp. Getting close to town, we come by this lone house that appears abandoned. Similar to PIC-related but less worn down, had shut doors and intact glass windows. Friend with the flashlight decides to shine the light on the second-floor balcony because he's an idiot. The beam suddenly reveals the shadow of a person on the balcony. Shouldn't have done that .jpg. Friend, holding the flashlight, is transfixed for whatever reason and keeps the beam in place. We force that friend to shine beam away. As the beam is shown away from the balcony, we see that there is no person standing there. Friend shines light on the balcony again. Shadow figure reappears. Shine light away, figure disappears. Creepy, but nothing happens. We conclude that the shadow is probably from one of the balcony fixtures and/or the angle of the flashlight's beam. Continue with our trek to town. Get to town a little while later. Walk around the dimly lit town for a bit. Feels so exciting breaking curfews and roaming the empty streets that early in the morning. All the while, the thought of that shadow on the balcony is eating away at my mind. We may have been a little distance away from that house, but that shadow clearly looked like a person's. While I think about this, I realize that we all have stopped trying to scare each other. Little shits are probably just as bothered by that shadow as I was. We eventually find a bakery. It's closed. I don't know what I was expecting, .gif. We decide to head back to camp empty-handed. I'm dreading to cross that house again, but I keep it to myself. The crunch of dirt underfoot tells me we're now on the dirt road that leads back to camp, and that we would inevitably end up in front of that creepy old house again. Other two friends grow unusually silent. As the road seems to grow narrower, the surroundings darker, and the sounds of the night louder, we see the silhouette of the old house in the distance. Now, one of these dudes with me is a 6'3", clearly the biggest of us. Dude appears just as nervous as I think I do. He suggests that we don't shine the flashlight on the house this time. There is a possibility that the house could be occupied, and we could have been perceived as a bunch of pervs. We were already breaking several rules being out that late or early, and we wouldn't want to get into even more trouble. We all agree. We reach the front of the house sooner than we'd have wished, and we all instinctively look up to the balcony. There's a very obvious shadow on the second-floor balcony, illogically plastered on the wall, with nothing perceivable casting or creating it. Before we could stop him, the dude holding the flashlight directs the beam to the balcony. The shadow disappears. The shadow is gone. We force him, again, to pull the beam away. As soon as the beam leaves the spot it was in, the shadow returns. We're all curious at this point. So when Fern says he's going to shine the beam on the balcony again, we don't stop him. We lock our eyes on the shadow as he slowly directs the torch's light towards it. He inches the beam toward the immobile shadow, and like an eraser, the torchlight literally erases parts of the shadowy figure it comes into contact with. The figure, eventually, is completely erased by the yellow, incandescent light. The human figure is completely gone. Maybe in an attempt to scare us, Flashlight Guy shuts the light off. He was probably expecting the shadow to reappear, so imagine his shock when it doesn't. In an obvious panic, Flashlight Bro struggles to turn the light back on. After fumbling around with the torch in the black of night, he eventually switches it on and directs the beam to the balcony. No freaking shadow. Off on. Still no shadow. Unsure about what just happened, we stand on that dirt road. Our gaze is transfixed on that balcony where that mysterious shadow dwelt unmoving, until just a few moments ago. Nothing. Someone motions that we nope our way out of that place. We all second that and are about to leave when I decide to look back towards the direction of the town we just left. I don't know or remember what compelled me to do that, but I did. And there, lying flat in the middle of the dirt road, was the freaking shadow, once again attached to nothing. Sadaku! I scream and book it out of there. I don't know if the others see the shadow, but the rapid crunching of dirt and the unmanly screams of two dudes tell me that the two are running as well. Black Bro overtakes me like nothing and clouds the road ahead of me with dirt. Flashlight Bro is at the rear and is shining his torch all over the place. I'm seeing shadowy figures all over the place from the erratic light cast by the torch and the dust cloud in front of me. A body hanging by its neck, a nope hugging the trunk of a tree, a pair of eyes hiding under the roots of an angry-looking tree. This only makes me run faster. Flashlight Boy is crying. I can only imagine what the poor shit is going through back there. But Black Bro isn't slowing down, so neither do I. We all make it back to camp at different times. Black Bro makes it in time for roll call. That dude is fast. Flashlight Boy and I are late. We all get punished anyway later on when we are snitched. To top things off, the others back at camp drink our hot cocoa.
Be me, driving to my girlfriend's house, Beautiful Saturday morning, the last days of winter. Look to the side of the road to some trees, oak, I think. Over one of them I spot this little black form, just there, gliding over the top of the tree, shifting, changing, almost pulsating. Not a swarm of mosquitoes, it seems more like smoke, but self-contained. It's not from the tree, it's this rhomboidal shape of smoke, like a black flame just floating over it. Of course, it's just a moment. Going at 100 kilometers per hour, I surpass it pretty quickly. But it's just a question of time. Another tree, another shape, somewhat bigger this time. And another, just 2 trees down the road. And another one, on the tree near the previous one. Starting to wonder if I'm dreaming this, the scene is surreal. Soon every tree I see on the side has these shapes gliding over them. Some of the street lights too. Kinda scared at this moment, but also kinda relieved, nostalgic. It's a strange mixture of emotions. Soon I don't see them anymore. Other trees and street lights, but no shapes anymore. Never saw them again, and I drive down that road almost every day. Still don't know to this day what they could have been. I wish I could sometimes. I still don't know.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.